Please welcome to the stage Mike Mazzola, Stephen Loy, Lacy McManus, and Ashwith Chilvery, the A-Team. Welcome. How are you?
Good.
Great. On this rainy New Orleans day, it's a pleasure to have you all here. We'll make sure you're all mic'd up. Oops, there we go. All right, we're going to take a moment to introduce our panel, and we are going to start with Mr. Mike over here on the end. Mike Mazzola is our Executive Director for the NSF Fuel Initiative. Please, Mike, tell us a little bit about your background and your role in NSF Fuel, and anything else you'd like to say about coming to Louisiana?
Sure. Thank you, Kimberly, for making fuel the centerpiece of this wonderful energy forum. As Kimberly is hinting there, I'm the only person on this panel here who isn't born and raised in Louisiana. I've been here about 4 months. Prior to coming to Baton Rouge, where my wife and I are now residing, I was in Charlotte, North Carolina for 7 years. Another major, you may or may not be aware of this, but it's another major energy hub in the United States. And I ran a large energy research center there at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, a public-private partnership called EPIC, the Energy Production Infrastructure Center. And while we were there, we were organizing North and South Carolina into an innovation engine in its own right for to serve the national and international needs to expand the supply chain for offshore wind, for which North Carolina has the largest offshore wind potential in the Atlantic seaboard. So energy is something I have been doing for a long time, but I'm no stranger to the South. Before coming to Charlotte, I was at Mississippi State University for 24 years. My 3 lovely daughters are all born and raised in the Deep South, and so I feel like I've come home.
We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Stephen Loy. And Stephen, tell us your role in NSF Fuel and a little bit about your background.
Great. Thank you, Kimberly. So I'm the Director of Technology Commercialization. I started, like we keep saying, I think I'm on week 4. I think you're at week 5, so this is all new to us. But I've spent the past 20 years working for Nexus, Louisiana, and there we support entrepreneurs. And that's obviously my goal here, is to try to take what's happening in the labs and in the garages in Louisiana and get it out on Main Street. And when I was talking with people about this opportunity, they were asking, what's out there as it relates to entrepreneurship in energy. And we actually have a gentleman at the tech park where I work whose father worked in industry. And Kellen was a technology guy. He loved the tech aspect of it. And so he was never going to be in energy until this opportunity came up. He now is working with Shell to do a carbon capturing software, and it's in our DNA, the oil and gas industry here, and I think that's what is fascinating to find out. So as we've been traveling around, there's a lot happening here, which makes me feel a sense of relief. But it's exciting to be here, and thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Lacy, how are you?
Doing good. I think my mic is working.
There it is. You might have to hold it. You got the droopy mic. There you go. Please introduce yourself and tell us your role in NSF Fuel and give us a little background. You are an economic development superstar or superhero, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, thank you for that. I'm Lacy McManus. I'm the Director of Workforce Development at Fuel, and as Kimberly alluded to, I've spent the last 15 or so years of my career in Louisiana doing at first community development, but then quickly transitioned into economic development and with a specialty in workforce development. My family goes back generations in Louisiana, so I'm a very proud Louisiana native, and I'm even prouder to be raising the next generation of 3 little Louisianians just a few blocks from here. And that is certainly, no pun intended, but what fuels me day in, day out to be a part of this initiative, a part of this effort. Prior to my time joining the Fuel team, I was with GNO Inc., where I had the pleasure of leading the H to the Future initiative, which is very similar to fuel and makeup, but with a more specific focus on hydrogen and the transition of hydrogen from gray to green and blue, and really looking at South Louisiana. So this opportunity to work statewide across a few different technical areas was incredibly intriguing, great opportunity for me. Prior to my time at GNO Inc. and my role with H to the Future, I was actually with Amazon Web Services, where I oversaw some of their workforce development efforts, both nationally and internationally, for the digital transformation side of that team. So it's incredibly exciting to be on the cusp of either a new or renewed skill set and emerging occupational sector and be leading those charges, whether nationally, internationally, but more especially for me here in my home state, creating those opportunities, frankly, for women who look like me and hopefully for my 3 little girls to enter into this industry if they so choose in the years to come. So the Fuel opportunity and platform is really unique in that regard, and I'm excited to charge forward and see what we can do over the next 10 years.
Great, thank you. And Ashwith, please take us down your journey about what you do for Xavier University and your role in NSF Fuel, and
Sure.
what you're thinking about energy.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
Assistant Vice President of Research and Sponsored Programs at Xavier, and a physicist by trade. I've been 10 years now here as a
10
faculty,
years?
yes,
Yeah.
in New Orleans, and energy researcher as well. I think this is my week 5 as an interim role in the Use-Inspired R&D. Excited, and this is interesting to see how we could build synergies here in Louisiana. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to start with Mike kind of setting the table with NSF Fuel and specifically talking about the technical research areas for the use-inspired research and what we're focusing on, and maybe give us an example of some of the things that you've seen since you started.
Well, thank you, Kimberly. I want to start by saying what fuel is not. It is not painted purple and gold. They were sweating over here because they caught me twice saying blue and gold. I came from a Navy family, and I can't stop saying that sometimes. But it is not painted purple and gold. And for obviously a home audience here in Tulane, I want to point out Dan Shantz, who is an associate dean right now in science and engineering, has really laid the groundwork for our use-inspired research mission that Ashwith is now, who was his, I'll call him his wingman, so
Yeah.
almost a lieutenant. And so Ashwith has taken over from Dan. So I will have to say that these two people really did a fantastic job in setting up our core investments, or our process for making core investments. We've already selected 3 proposals for award under our outside of RFP process, and our request for proposal process, which is strongly industry driven. That's how we're bringing the use in inspiration into it. So Dan and Ashwith and their committee came up with an RFI process, request for information, which went to our many industry partners. So we are an ecosystem. We are not, the universities are only a subset of what we really are. We are a statewide innovation engine in energy. So those 5 RFPs just closed, and we're evaluating those proposals for further award right now. So what are our technical areas? You can go to our webpage, fuellouisiana.org, to see more details, but basically the original concept was around 6 major themes: carbon capture, usage and storage, sustainable hydrogen, energy efficiency, and what I've come to learn is could be really the amazing regional advantage we have in Louisiana, which is CO2 as a feedstock. And that sort of led to an idea that we have, which is we should be thinking, if we're thinking about not the current idea of carbon storage, but the ideas 2 or 3 rungs beyond. And so I like to say to keep it simple, we're interested in developing through use-inspired research and then translation to commercial use, storage in products before geology. Now think about that for a second. Storage in products before geology. We may be a natural place for CO2 underground sequestration, but our industries all up and down the Mississippi River are some of the most brilliant manipulators of molecules in the world. And frankly, making new products from what is a waste product is really what chemical engineering is all about. So that CO2 as a feedstock, I think you'll see becoming a major theme in the research and commercialization work that we fund. Sustainable water management, structural integrity, and economic and policy research. So those are our main themes.
Great. The next question is for Stephen. It's around technology translation. So NSF Fuel hopes to be that global energy transition leader, right? So it is for Louisiana, but we are one of 10 engines looking at the newest of technologies to make transformation. So, but for the sake of the audience, when research is done, particularly basic research, basic science, moving that into an invention and then moving that into innovation, and then as Mike was talking about, industry and actual use, can you explain to the audience a little bit about how that works? Maybe not the granular level, but maybe the 30,000 foot, just so they're tracking with how that needs to work and what we're asking the audience as a function of the role that they could play in the NSF Fuel.
Great question. And I'm going to let Ashwith also kind of, will tag team this one a little bit because he certainly lives this every single day. But part of the the information that, the title that Mike used was use-inspired. So this is about research that can go out onto Main Street. So it's not research for research's sake. Mm-hmm. But it really starts at the institutional level. You have to make sure that that they have everything in place to where you aren't just piling on to the researchers, like besides teaching and doing this and that and the other, then you have to do research. But after that, then the researcher, you have to teach them, or show them how to be an entrepreneur. Because a lot of people, I see entrepreneurs in the audience, they were just born that way, but not every researcher was born that way. So you need to provide them and show them, very smart people, but you just need to show them what that looks like. And there are certain things like iCore. We partnered with New Lab and GNO Inc. to do some accelerator workshops that kind of dovetailed into iCore of what's the difference between a small business and an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of different things like that. And so showing them what that looks like and really opening their eyes that the impact that they can have on the world just by getting it outside the lab, I think is important. And then finally, it's also getting industry involved. For the most part, that's going to be your customer. And we always say, customer, who's going to be your customer? Who's going to buy your product? Because if you don't have a customer, then you just have a hobby. And that's not the business that we're in, is to have hobbyists. So having a partner in industry, both who can help guide you and say, okay, we would buy that from you, and these are the issues that we're having, but they can also kind of be your mentor and help provide some guidance with that.
And in addition to use-inspired R&D, unlike basic research, use-inspired R&D is informed by the markets, and it includes pathways to real-world applications. So they carry these characteristics give them an intrinsic value and potentially be marketable and even be commercially viable. So that facilitates kind of seamless transition from research to innovation.
Right, so there's a feedback loop that happens between the researcher and the industry in terms of what they find their pain points to be so that it can inform
That's right. It's
the solutions that they're solving through their research, right?
That's right,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
And for our RFPs, every one of them had to have an industry partner and an HBCU partner as well.
That's a great detail. Let's hear that again. So in the RFP, they have to have One,
industry partner,
an industry partner.
and an
Two,
HBCU partner.
and an HBCU
And that's
partner.
not just, you can't just put the name on it and be done with it. This,
Mm-hmm.
it is a true partnership, and I believe we have made phone calls just to make sure that it's a true partnership.
And maybe we can just add, if I can, just 1 second about why that is. The whole Engines program is about bringing 350 million people to the economy of the future, because we are competing with other economies that don't share our values and have far more people than we have. And so there's a very practical reason why we want every person in Louisiana who may not have participated in the energy economy in the past, we want them to have the opportunity to participate now.
So I'm just curious if someone can clarify one thing in my mind, and maybe some of the folks in the audience are thinking this. Does the industry partner say, oh, this is a pain point and I would like this solution, or is that driven by someone that's in the research ranks at the Louisiana University saying, oh, I think I have a solution for X? How does that actually work when you match them up or when they are getting matched up?
Well, I think it can go both ways.
Both ways?
You can say, I have this widget, is there a customer for it? Or industry can come to you and say, we're having this problem. We aren't really sure what the solution is. What say you? And so I think it can go both ways.
Great.
Yeah, in addition to that one, right, so using part is certainly making sure that the industry has those pain points, and certainly the university researchers would be able to provide solutions or kind of come up with technologies that could well fit to their specific challenge. Yeah.
And Ashwith, maybe you want to mention a little bit how we're going to make sure that happens through the review process. Who's reviewing these proposals?
Sure. Some of the proposals are reviewed by industry folks, making sure that, again, we have a pretty structured pattern to make sure the review panel is not avoiding all the conflict of interest, and also making sure that the criterions, like you just mentioned, the industry partner and the HPC partnership is well advanced. Yes.
Great. So we're going to shift gears just a little bit. Lacy, you have extensive experience in workforce development in Louisiana. Can you reflect for a moment with us on what you have seen are the gaps and how you might be thinking about tying those gaps to bridging through the NSF Fuel Initiative and workforce development?
Sure. So I'm looking at the clock. I have 27 minutes, and I could probably talk for 27 days on this. So let me summarize and give you a very high-level overview of the workforce ecosystem as I see it. And I've had, just in the last few weeks of being in this role, in addition to my years of experience in the field, the last few weeks I've had the opportunity to deep dive with partners across the state, leveraging both the fuel network as well as the law STEM ecosystem, some of our Department of Education partners, economic development partners. And there have been a few core sort of themes and trends that resonate across the state. But I think really when you look at a root cause analysis of some of the breakdowns across our workforce pipeline as it relates to energy, there's two core themes that most deeply concern me and I think we need to work to rectify quite quickly through fuel and through this network of partnerships. And one of those themes is distrust. And another one of those themes is a lack of awareness, and the two really go hand in hand. And then when you overlay on top of those themes the real issues we have in terms of our public education system in Louisiana, which for those of you who are Louisiana natives or residents, you probably know we have a lot of work to do in that space. When you overlay some of our lack of transportation, lack of childcare access, you get a tough ecosystem to try to be innovative and be developing new models in. And I want to talk for just a minute about the lack of awareness and the distrust. The real truth when we look at the numbers in Louisiana around energy workforce is that the state has lost about 21,000 jobs in energy in the last 20 years. And that job loss has been in parallel to some of the highest production levels we've seen in our energy economy along that same trajectory. So the truth of the matter is many of our energy players are rapidly upgrading and intensifying some of their processes and their equipment at their facilities, which is great in terms of production. Also fantastic from a workforce perspective because that means even though we have fewer jobs, a lot of those jobs require higher skills. So while that might be all well and good from a certain range of metrics, when we go back to that trust issue and we go back to those awareness issues, each one of those 21,000 jobs lost, that represents an individual, that represents a family, that represents a line of economic stability that is no longer in place. And I think we have to be very real and very honest with ourselves and with our communities that we're working with on the reciprocal impacts that that has, not only within communities, within families, but also multi-generations, right? So if you have a child, a niece, a nephew, a grandchild who has seen their family livelihood become destabilized by those downturns, you're gonna have a real distrust of that industry. You couple that with a lack of awareness of what's happening behind those fence lines. In many cases, there's tremendous advancements going on in terms of decarbonization, technological upgrades, really exciting stuff that I think would appeal to a lot of our younger generations. However, many of those generations look at oil and gas, they look at energy as being environmentally damaging. Look at, if you're a fence line community, you look at many of those industries as being really damaging to public health, right? So we have some generational awareness issues in terms of what's happening in many of our industry facilities and what those generations are feeling both in terms of their household stability, finances, and what they're seeing and reading in the media and on social media as well. So those are some core issues that we're going to need to rectify through the fuel program, and frankly, we're going to need a lot more than 10 years to get that done and $160 million to get that done. We're looking at really generational paradigm shifts in that space. And what I'm most excited about with the fuel opportunity is taking where we already have really good, effective engagement programs for students as well as some of our teachers, especially in the K-12 system, and figuring out how do we pour our resources, our energy, our connectivity into those programs and scale them to maximize their impact. Many of the really high quality programs that we have in the landscape in Louisiana, they're small, they're just teen-na, and they're having fantastic impact, but on typically a highly localized level. Again, looking at those challenges around housing, childcare, transportation, awareness, et cetera. So how can we use fuel to light a fire under those programs, expand them, maximize them, and then connect them with one another so that we have a functioning ecosystem for workforce development and awareness across Louisiana for our energy industry.
So, Lacy, that was a great response to this question. It kind of painted the picture. To double click into K through 12, and is there an example of sort of a bright and shining star that you would like to fuel?
Oh my goodness!
And
well,
grow?
You are teeing me up for my panel at 10:15 tomorrow morning. So if you join me then, you will hear firsthand from one of those examples. There's a few I would say, and again, I don't want to preview too much what we'll be talking about tomorrow morning's panel. But Exxon, for example, as an industry leader, has actually taken the initiative to go into their workplace and really practice what they preach, creating a fantastic high school internship program, which is really, really difficult on an industrial site. You have TWIC card considerations, which they've managed to maneuver around. You have considerations around transportation and getting individuals to that job site, which they've taken, I think, a very hard look at. You have issues around parental engagement and consent as well, and they have really gone really far out of their way as an industry leader to partner with the East Baton Rouge Parish School System and start a model that I think has a lot of opportunity to be replicated across industrial partners, but it does indeed take an industrial partner, a corporate partner who has that vision, who has that foresight, and is willing to go in and think creatively about insurance and federal legislation coming down from Homeland Security to make that happen. So more to come on that at 10:15 tomorrow morning.
There you go. Thank you. Mike, the next question is for you. How can Louisiana's energy transition serve as a model for global energy industries?
Thankfully, that's the easiest question to answer because energy, we all know, is global, and energy in this country is something Louisiana does better than most places, if not all. Quick background, Kimberly mentioned there were 10 innovation engines that were awarded across the country. Each one had to be in a unique, distinct location. So this is a people and place program. And out of those 10, only Louisiana is the only energy engine in their portfolio of 10. So we were recognized, or you were recognized, as being the most important place in the country to lead the energy transformation. In terms of being globally relevant, there's really three things that really set Louisiana apart. First is our globally ready to work workforce, which is why the best in the business, Lacy McManus, was recruited by Andy Moss and I. Andy is actually the real godfather of fuel. He's an associate vice president for research at LSU for innovation and ecosystem development. And so he was the guy who really organized the successful application for fuel. And when I came on board, he said, we got to get Lacy, and we got Lacy. So because the people we have, our workforce, is what makes us globally competitive. But it's also our global infrastructure. 4 of the nation's most important energy exporting terminals are in Louisiana. And they are critical not just to supplying the global economy with needed natural gas. We all know that they're a core factor in stabilizing geopolitics. So that's how important our global infrastructure is. The last is our experience or know-how, the plants that we have all up and down the Mississippi River are evidence of the competitiveness of Louisiana in attracting billions of dollars of investment. So direct foreign investors look to Louisiana and we pencil out. That means that even though we pay first world wages to work here, we still are viewed as being one of the most profitable places to invest. And as we heard on Friday, that there are hundreds of billions of dollars that are going to be invested in the next 3 to 8 years that will cement the energy industry infrastructure for the next 100 years.
All right, my next question is for Ashwith. So how can industry and educational institutions support research or workforce development? How can they best work together?
Sure, I think I know it goes back to what we just discussed. So, a continuous feedback loop or a virtuous cycle of engagement with industry partners is key, not just to foster an ecosystem, but also to accelerate innovation, the user-inspired R&D part. Fuel kind of facilitates the robust engagement between the industry partners, the education institutions, as well as the startup community here. Not just for user-inspired R&D, but the technology commercialization part, the workforce development component, right, and the community engagement part as well. Just so that it creates that feedback loop, not to as we do aim to build a portfolio of technologies or boosting innovation capabilities across the state, or even to creating those lasting connections between the researchers and the communities. So the virtuous cycle of engagement is key. Yeah.
Excellent. My next question is for Mike. This is around federal policies. So I know that's a hot topic, but tell us what you're thinking as it relates to energy.
Well, I think it was so appropriate to have Senator Bill Cassidy open this meeting. He, as many know, he is a very influential member of the Republican caucus in the Senate, and he illustrates the fact that this is an issue, and economic development and good jobs creation through innovation is something that we virtually all agree on in this country. And so I'm extremely optimistic that the Innovation Engines program will be recognized as it has been as a very bipartisan response to the needs of this country to continue to grow its economy and create great jobs.
All right. Stephen, how you doing over there?
Great.
Great. So recently we launched the proof of concept. Why don't you tell the audience what that is and maybe how you think we define success in that?
Yeah. So proof of concept fund is really, it's critical part to grow our entrepreneurial ecosystem here in the state. And it's really one of the things that got me excited about this opportunity. And so I always talk about the life cycle of a funding of a company. You have friends, family, and fools. And then usually there's just this dark, deep pit, and where you can't get money just to go to the next level. And it's
What do they
often
call
called
that?
the Valley of Death. And so it's very positive stuff. So, but Louisiana as a whole often doesn't have that, or it doesn't have that at all. And it's really important that our proof of concept fund is going to serve as the Valley of Death fund. And so what we want to do is to be able to provide anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000 to these companies who will get them to the next level, who will be able to go to Boot 64, the Hackett Group, Innovation Catalyst, and say, okay,
Tulane Ventures.
and they keep growing, and that's a great thing. If you can't, if
Exactly,
you start
yeah.
forgetting about them, that shows you have a thriving ecosystem. But is try to get them over the hump, and so where the applications are still open, they'll close this Sunday at midnight. And what I love about this is I got an email last night from one of the applicants, and they're like, Stephen, I know our product's going to take $770,000 to come to realization, but we have talked to an investor, and I know who they are, and they said if we're able to make it to the next level, this investment company will provide the next round of funding, and that's huge. But for $100,000, $150,000, then this company can get another $700,000, $750,000, and that's huge. And I think that's just shows the value that Fuel can bring to the startup community.
And Stephen and the entire, all of the directors have become incredibly well trained in that but for. So that was not just a little accident in language. That's our mission. But for the Fuel investment, X, Y, Z might not have happened. And so that's the kind of impact that Stephen and the Proof of Concept Fund could have for our startup culture.
Yes, and so I'll just give a plug for the SSBCI funds. This is an initiative that came through the U.S. Treasury post-COVID. So the state of Louisiana had applicants. Tulane was one of them. The long story short was we created venture funds that will allow us, and ours is, in particular is a seed fund that allows us to do early stage investing. Yeah. So going back to Mike's but for, de-risking these technologies in these early proof of concept funds is critically important for investment, even if it's seed investment in our early stage SSBCI fund, where the state is matching dollar for dollar the funding, in our case, that Tulane provides. And so it's a $10 million fund, and energy is part of the investment thesis. And so we'll be able to syndicate to the other 7 funds that are located in Louisiana, and hopefully that attracts additional investment to the state and continues to de-risk and allows these startups to actually get traction and revenue, which then helps to grow the economy.
And let me say also
Go ahead.
that the Proof of Concept Fund is a grant,
Yeah.
and that's what the attorneys tell me, it's a grant. But as I tell the applicants, we're going to treat this as an investment because it's an investment from Fuel. And so we're going to provide coaching. We're going to provide mentors. And so it's just, and even if they haven't received professional funding yet, hopefully by the time they have gone through the Proof of Concept Fund, they'll know better how to communicate with and be able to get professional funding.
And that's super important. We're starting the ball rolling with what amounts to a non-dilutive investment.
Exactly.
And the goal is to get the companies to the investable stage and then unlock private leverage. And that's really important for us. That's really the main but for that we're seeking. And it answers the conundrum that Lacy kind of let slip and didn't explain how we were going to solve it. How does $160 million affect a $100 billion transformation? Well, Even the National Science Foundation has addressed us with all the engines. We know, they tell us, $160 million can't do the job by itself. So the whole design of the program is to bring the necessary leverage into our region of service, and collectively we'll get the job done.
That's a great segue into my last question, because we are going to try to get some questions from the audience. So this question is for all of you. How can the audience get involved to support the transformation in the energy ecosystem that we're talking about in the state of Louisiana? So if you were going to give them a nugget, a takeaway, a call to action, what would that be?
Well, I see some investors in the audience. Please invest in these companies after the proof of concept fund. And also, we desperately need mentors too from industry as well. So please reach out.
Yeah, and I would say that there's a push for work-based learning right now across the state that's coming from the Department of Ed, and then hopefully will be mirrored by some of our community colleges and four-year schools as well. So if you are an owner of a company that is working in the energy space, be open and willing to taking on early career talent, even if it's just for a job shadow, an externship, an internship. Think creatively about your hiring practices. I know how difficult it can be to get the young folks in the door, and the supervision it takes, the mentorship it takes, but consider the pipeline, consider the long-term benefits. Think, if you will, proactively and years ahead at what that can mean for that individual, and not only open your doors, but think really considerately around how you could construct a really meaningful experience for that individual, especially if it's someone who's coming from a diverse background or a traditionally disenfranchised background. That's truly how we are going to build the next generation of meaningful energy workforce and start shifting those issues of trust and awareness that I mentioned. It's by folks like you in this room taking up that mantle and opening your doors to those individuals.
So Lacy, could you introduce the fifth member of the team who's so new he's not up here right now?
Yes, wish he was here. Our Director of Inclusive Community Engagement is Dr. Gerard Melanson. He's not with us today because he's actually in D.C. with the Department of Energy presenting at the White House on some energy workforce initiatives. But if Gerard was here, I think he would echo my comments and then some. We're thrilled to have Gerard on board. He brings to the table a wealth of experience in workforce development and inclusive community engagement, and then actual participation with the Department of Energy as well on some of their transformation and renewable energy efforts as well. So very excited to have him on the team. Hopefully next year he'll be able to join us.
Well, and he'll be here tomorrow. If anyone's out there, grab me and I'll introduce you to him.
Yep. In terms of that, Interns kind of provides an interesting platform or framework for all diverse stakeholders to engage in. So for Youth-Inspired R&D, it would be interesting to see how the small business, the SBR, STTRs, or the startup community here could engage with our academic folks. So that'd be great to see that, yes.
I like that. More SBIR, STTR for the state of Louisiana. You might want to tell the audience what that is. I'm not sure. That's some language we're intimately familiar with, but that is really important. Non-dilutive funding. Go ahead.
Sure. Small business innovation research and small business, the STTR is small business technology transfer.
That's right.
Yep. I think seven agencies, federal agencies, do have the SBR STTR programs, like NASA, NSF, NIH, and other folks. But certainly would like to see that ecosystem develop here. I'm coming from Huntsville, Alabama. There's a big defense cluster over there. So
yeah.
Yes, I'm familiar with that. Yes.
So, Mike, if you were going to ask the audience for support, what would that be?
Go to our webpage, and you'll see at the bottom of that webpage a long list of our current partners. And I would invite you to reach out to any of us, check out our social media, and if you don't see yourself there, reach out to us because we'd like to welcome you aboard.
All right, so we have about 5 minutes left, and I think, where is our question wrangler? Kyle, if you're out there. Oh, there he is.
We have some questions for sure. First one is, what are the biggest goals for the end of this year and beginning of next year?
To begin getting our investable money spent and put to use. So As I mentioned earlier, Dan and Ashwith led the charge, and another individual, Stephen and Jason Boudreau, on the Proof of Concept Fund, to get us to the point where we could satisfy our terms and conditions with our cooperative agreement. By the way, we don't have a grant. I don't know if you know the difference, but a cooperative agreement means the National Science Foundation works with us as partners. It's a contract, right? And so there's terms and conditions, and we had to get from ground zero, set up a program in which we could solicit the best ideas everywhere in the state and get effective research or proof of concept fund awards out the door. We've selected 3, and in December we'll be probably announcing our entire slate of awards, and we'll be busily contracting. And so by January 1st, I want to have as much of our innovation capacity as possible working.
All right, next question is for you, Michael. How quickly do you anticipate evaluating the 5 RFI applications you have in your pipeline now?
I'm going to kick that question to Ashwith.
As soon as possible, and we hope, as Mike has mentioned, so we hope to have the reviews completed and potential awards be announced before we go to the Christmas break, so December 2nd, 3rd weeks, yes.
Our proof of concept awards will happen before the Christmas break. Yeah. Winning!
It's not a competition.
All right. We have a few students in the audience, it appears. They just are asking, with students that may have some low experience in the energy but aspiring to get involved in the energy transition with an energy company, is there any advice for any students that are looking to get into the industry?
Lacy?
Yeah, you're pointing to me. I would say, one, I'm looking at Eric Smith and Pierre Connor over here. If you do not know these 2 guys, you need to. The work that they're doing at Tulane's Energy Institute is fantastic, and the project-based learning that they have within their curriculum, I think, is an absolutely fantastic way for students to have real-world experience, get to know companies, dive in headfirst into some of the most exciting challenges in the energy space. So on campus, that's an immediate opportunity for you. And I would say, and I know this sounds cliche, but internships, absolutely critical. If you don't know where to start with internships, I would say, 1, check out, as Mike mentioned, our Fuel website and see the companies that are listed there. You can go in particular to my workforce development subcommittee and see the companies that are listed on my subcommittee. Those are companies that are going to be really interested in developing workforce pipelines, and I can tell you already have some programs in place. So feel free at any point, my name and my email address are on our website as well. You can reach out to me personally, and I'd be happy to make connections directly for you with any of those companies if you're interested in learning more about their internship programs. And then I would say a third thing, and I used to hear this all the time when I was an undergrad, and it was so weird and sounded so awkward, but if you know folks who work in the energy industry, or your parents do, or your professors do, and they can make a warm introduction for you over text, email, whatever it might be, and you can go grab a cup of coffee with that person, do it. Even if you're in the business school and that individual is a petroleum engineer and you never want to be a petroleum engineer, sit down with them. Understand what they're doing day in, day out. Understand the trends that are happening in their workplace, how their career has shifted over time. Take the opportunity now to start building the network that you are going to need tomorrow and for the next 40 years of your career. It is never too early to start that, and I know it can be weird and intimidating to sit down to coffee with a complete stranger, but do it, and do it often and as many times as you possibly can. That will be transformative for you.
It starts awkward, but you'll get used to it over
You
time
will.
when you get to be my age.
I think that's our final question.
All right, well, let's give this panel a warm round of applause.
And Kimberly, could I make one last remark? I'd like to make a plug. I mentioned that we have a cooperative agreement, and the National Science Foundation assigns actually 2 incredible project directors to help us. They are equally interested in the success of Fuel. Our lead project director is Dr. Rebecca Shearman, and she is on the program tomorrow afternoon. So I encourage everyone to come to that panel and to introduce yourself and ask her what she thinks about fuel and how you can get involved.
Well, I just want to say it's been an honor. This team is going to be transformative, and this community is going to help you to do that. I think this is a really powerful moment in the history of Louisiana, and all eyes are on us because we now have this National Science Foundation Fuel Initiative, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the progress, and hopefully we'll have you back next year to do a report out, and we'll be working together. So congratulations on all the accomplishments, and let us know how we can help.
Thank you, Kimberly.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Kimberly.